Emily.
Hi, Barb.
Hello,
Happy
hello.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Happy podcasting. All the good things. So I was putzing around with all the buttons and having some fun with StreamYard and seeing the comments coming in and all the good things. So, oh boy, we got Minneapolis. Oh, Agency of One. Let's see who else. Amy Boldak. Looking forward. This is fun clicking all the things. Good morning. Oh, hey, Jesse. What a way to start the day. Yeah. High five. All right. So we're going to talk about podcast guesting and
Yay,
all
can't
the
wait.
things.
Favorite topic.
Yes, exactly. All right. Welcome. What's up, Buttercups? We are going to talk about podcast guesting, Emily, Aborn, and I. And this isn't going to be around like the tech part of it. It's going to be more around how to use it for marketing, how to be their favorite guest, how to get them to have them come back and ask you to be on again, and like the pitching and all of that stuff. So we're going to start with a little bit of background just so that you get an understanding of why we are so excited about podcast guesting and why we would like you to be so excited. So Emily, I'm going to let you start because you've been in it longer than me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I mean, truth be told, I've really had the podcasting bug since I was like a little kid. I had like the tape recorder and I'd run around interviewing everybody and all that stuff. So, I have been a podcast host at heart since very, very young. But it actually was my first job out of college. I worked for a chiropractor and she had a podcast called For the Health of It. I think she's still running it actually. And I got to be, oh, Dave, I had such fun on your show. I got to be on her show as her co-host, and we just had a lot of fun doing that. And I was like, okay, I love this medium as a way of learning. And like, I want to say what I really love about audio. Like, there's something about audio that gets into our body. And so when we're like listening to something, the information just has this way of like integrating in a way that reading it does not. So it became I was hooked, and I actually ended up going to that same studio to learn how to like produce one of my own. And I had a show for 4.5 years called She Built This, where I did have guests on, and this is where I learned as a host all of the things I love and also don't love about guests that come on to podcasts. And like some of the things I would watch people do, I was like, oh my gosh, these are just mistakes that people are repeating over and over and over again. And I want to help. I'm like so desire to help them be a better guest because what they have to say is so, so good. It's just about, how they're presenting it to the host. And so I think that's what we're really going to get into today is like how important it is for the host to be advocating for their listeners. And that is why it's so important for us as guests to put our best foot forward and say, like, I want to be the guest that is going to help your listeners get value and help you shine as a host, right? So today I host Content with Character, which is soon to be rebranding to Small Business Casual. And I am a solo podcast, so I don't have guests anymore, but I have some funny stories about people who still ask me to be a guest, even though I don't have guests. So that's my story. I have been doing this, I think now since 2008 and like had my own show since 2018. So
Very good. And then just for reference too, who's your sweet spot? Who do you help and how?
I help small business owners, nonprofits, and I have like this special little niche in the interior design and home trades industries as a writer, as a copywriter.
Great. Awesome. Because I think sometimes too, we think about podcasting as like that's our only thing or that's that person's only thing. And it's sometimes just an extension of our day-to-day business as small business owners.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So my background is I started mine just like a year and a half ago, and I had been toying with the idea for like a couple of years. I was like, no, I can't do it. Yes, I can. No, I can't do it. And I just kept going back and forth because I was so scared to do it. And so then for probably a good couple months, I was like all enthralled in like how to do it right. And that really stopped me a lot because people kept telling me all their different things. And I was like, okay, I'm just done with this. Like, I'm just going to start it and just deal with it. Like, it'll be what it is. And then I started podcast guesting. I didn't start guesting at the very beginning. And then I went into guesting and found that I loved it just for the sheer fact of it felt easy to me because I was already talking about stuff that I loved and that I knew. And I know when we started talking and we first met, and we were talking about how to pitch. I got really nervous then about how I pitched you, and we talked before that. Thankfully, I didn't pitch you as being a guest specifically because you didn't have them. Because when we first met is when I was first doing it, and I was just like going on everything and anything, and have since learned there's a good way and a bad way, not a right and a wrong, but there's like different ways to figure out like how to do it so that it works for you or for me or for whatnot. So I think the big thing is people get hung up on tech as sort of a procrastinator type thing, maybe.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to get into this this detail. So now we're going to bring on our special guest.
Dun, 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 dun.
Andy Lyons.
Andy Lyons.
Hello, goddesses. I'm so happy to be here with you talking about one of my favorite topics, not just podcasting, but about guesting. I mean, my gosh, do you remember the first time you were a guest on a podcast? Wasn't it scary?
Yes, I actually think it was scary.
And how about the first time you interviewed someone?
Very scary. Yes. I followed every question I had written down to a T like a robot.
Yes. Over prepare 100%.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Andy,
right.
Tell us a little bit of your story, because you not only have a podcast of your own, and this is not your first rodeo, you also run an entire group full of podcasters.
No. Oh my gosh. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. I began my podcasting journey back in 2012. And I'll be honest with you, even earlier when video cameras came out, I was like, gosh, the camera loves me. And I really love doing all these things, But what was I going to do in 1988, right? Go down to the local TV station, get hired? I don't think so. So I was waiting a long time for us to be able to do this. But my first podcast, I was very nervous, and it was for a platform I had called Bring Back Desire, and it was called After Dark Radio. And I had a producer for 52 weeks in a row because it was just so scary. And I would bring on authors, and I'd have 2 guests per hour. And I was just fatoots the whole time. But after that 52 weeks in a row of doing that, I was like, I got this. And I went to talk radio. And no, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called. Blog Talk? Was it Blog Talk? Well, whatever. Where you could host your own. It was so long ago. And then, started doing Google Hangouts, but I always had a podcast. And this is my 6th one. Don't be caged by your age. Because when I turned 66 3 years ago, I realized that I was being caged by my age. And I wanted to talk about, how do we dissolve ageism? How do we help women age out loud and proud? So Don't Be Caged by Your Age is an interview style pro-aging podcast that interviews folks who have shattered age-related expectations and stereotypes, so we can help folks thrive after 65 and help younger women like you go, oh my gosh, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, what am I going to do? There's so many opportunities and possibilities.
I love it.
And then to your point, I'll just throw this in real quickly. As you age, finding community gets harder. Finding friends gets harder. And frankly, you become a lot more discerning on who you want to spend time with, because you don't know how much time you have left. And so I was looking for community and realized I wanted to have that experience that I have every year at PodFest, which is a wonderful event for indie podcasters in January. But we didn't have anything here. And I said, well, I'll create my own community. And I launched the New England Podcasters Group. Every second Saturday of the month, we meet in person. And that was scary too, even with all the experience I've had. You hope someone will show up, right? But I knew that podcasters were the ones I wanted to spend time with and talk about ways that we can grow and nurture each other.
I love it.
Thank you. All right. Well, I got to give a shout out to Agency of One, because he's got a big smile on his face, and that's very fun. Hi, back. All right. I met with him in Minneapolis when I was nomading through there like a year and a half ago. So it's fun to see him on here and stuff. So, all right. Should we jump into like the pitching? I like your story about, what was it, pitching into, Emily, what was the phrase you used?
Spraying and praying.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
you know what?
Let's not do that.
I'm gonna kick us off with a story. So just this morning, this is so fitting. Just this morning, my friend reaches out to me. She is a brand designer and she has a podcast called I think it's called Brand Transformations. And she only tells stories on the podcast of clients that she has done the branding for. So she brings on clients, they tell their story. That's it. Like, it is so very obvious. And I'm pretty sure, I could be mistaken on this, but I'm fairly sure it says right in the podcast description exactly what the podcast is about. Like, this is for my clients to tell their stories. So she sends me this screenshot this morning, and like, it's not just one of those quickie emails. So this is a 4-part screenshot where the email just goes on and on and on and on about himself. And it has a one sheet, which I was like, you should ask him if he wants your help branding, because it was not beautiful. But he also has a one sheet, which also is going on and on and on and on about himself. And had he taken 2 seconds to like listen to her podcast, look at the description of her podcast, find out, what is she all about, he would have known that that was not a good person for him to be pitching to. And I get these too. I have a podcast I sunsetted a year ago. The last episode is called The Last Episode. And if you look at the date, it is a year ago, and people still pitch me to be on that show. So that right there, I would say, is like step 1. It's a very, very easy thing to do. And it's also kind of a big mistake that people make, is like just pitching you when somebody did it to me just yesterday through Podmatch, and they know me. I was like, like, you've listened to my show, and I say it in my show many, many times. But taking 2 minutes to just get to know their show a little bit and find out if they even take guests in the first place, I think that's like step 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my story with that is with the pitching. I think that's kind of what we're going to get into quite a bit here, because that's really what's going to make or break it as far as being able to get onto the podcast. And I've received so many of them that they come in as all about them.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are in like an industry, like an air conditioner person. I don't care. My people don't care. Like, I don't care that and okay, so this is going to sound really, really crass, but like, there are so many people that pitch, I've overcome this thing, and this is why I know how to build a 1,000-figure business. And I'm tired of that story. I would like them to share specifically how they're going to help my listeners. And there's too many times where they just say, I've overcome this thing, I want to share what I did. And that's kind of icky to me.
I think one thing to help with that is, like, everybody listening and watching right now, you can take some time and think. I always say, like, come up with like 3 things you could talk about in your sleep, right? Like your 3 soapboxes, if you will, or whatever, the 3 things that make you most excited, or the 3 things you see your clients struggling with most. Like, pick 3 things and start brainstorming some ways that you can present those in a different way. So like, what's a creative way to present something? Because a lot of people will present the how I grew my business to 7 figures, or, what I did to get rich overnight, or how to create great content. Like, it's all just very generic stuff. And one of the ways you can instantly stand out is to come up with something that is like a little clever or unique. And it may be very similar to what a lot of other people are talking to. That's okay. We all have a lot of overlap in our topics, right? Like, it's hard to come up with something new under the sun about SEO and copywriting. But the way I can present it is in a unique way. Like, okay, I'm going to talk about infusing curiosity into your marketing. And people are like, ooh, what's that? Like, what does that mean to put curiosity in my marketing, right? So I might present something different in that kind of vein. And you can look through their episodes and see like what other people have spoken about and say, oh, well, I see that they've had somebody speak on SEO, but they haven't had somebody take this angle for it, or somebody's spoken on digital marketing, but they haven't done this. So think about your own topics. That's where I really encourage people to start, is think about your own 3 soapboxes and break those down into creative ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's great when a guest pitches and they come up with 3 titles.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Here's what I can talk about. So think about delighting the podcast host in that way, right? When you have that information. I love that suggestion, Emily.
I even like to give them like little bullet points underneath that, just so that then, I mean, those can directly be translated into show notes. And as a host, I look at that, I'm like, great, you just saved me like an entire hour of work.
Yeah. When I first started pitching, I tried to put video with mine and just a quick little snippet saying hi to the host and what I could do. And then when I was doing that at the very beginning, I don't know, I didn't get any response from any of them, but I think I was choosing the wrong shows and I wasn't quite doing it right in the pitch, even with the video. And so I wonder what you guys think, because you guys have been in it for so long. Do you think pitches need a video, or how does it matter?
I feel very strongly about that. Anybody who pitches me, I say, please send audio and video snippets.
Okay.
Because there's nothing worse than having someone who's like talking to a rock.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, that's great advice. So I have like a Spotify playlist that I'll give as like examples of podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't do a video, but I think it's great. And actually, I did have one woman once who sent like a very in-depth video, and it was very tailored. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't take guests, but this is a lovely video. So I think it's great. And I think that there is for sure an importance when you're a guest to remember, like, again, you want the audio to be good for the host. Like, you don't want to show up like you're in a sardine can. So showing that you have a good microphone, showing that you have ear pods, by sending in that recording ahead of time is great. Some hosts do a pre-chat to make sure that you're not a rock when you're talking. And I like those too as a great way to kind of like warm up and see if you're a good fit.
Yeah. I do look at those as a host now, because at the very beginning, I was allowing just anybody and everybody because I didn't know any better. And I just wanted to get the ball rolling and get some practice. And there were a couple people that it was a very difficult conversation, even though I was interested in the topic. And I thought that my listeners would be. Like, one guy came on and was talking about some health related things, but he came in no shirt and he was outside, and it was an awful sound. And I'm all for coming as you are and being who you are. However, I do think that there's a certain sense of professionalism to bring to these interviews. And then I try to let people know too, be as verbose as you want, because like, this is all about them. And if I get the sense that they're not going to be verbose from previous interviews that I've checked, now I check them, then I'm kind of like, okay, now I've got to approach it a little bit differently if I do indeed have them on. So I think I like the idea of having videos from a host perspective.
I like to think of it, or I like to remind people that like a podcast guest interview, it's not just another date in your calendar. It's not just like another Zoom call. It's like you want to take it very seriously, put time into preparing, like treat it sacred, because you really are, you want to put your best foot forward just as much as you want to have the host be like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. So I know Amy says no shirt for real.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that, and I mentioned how discerning I am now that I'm 69, may I just chat about you as the podcast guest as you're reviewing whether you want to be on a show? I really invite you, before saying yes or going out and doing a pitch, check the audience fit.
Yeah.
Do the listeners match the people you want to reach? Because this is one of the main reasons you're as a podcast guest, you want to increase your visibility and engagement and have it as a funnel opportunity for your business. But also, the host style. Is this a host that runs a conversation that you feel comfortable with them? And then production quality. Are they just haphazardly making this happen, or do they really care about the production of their show? How long have they been around? Is it a sporadic podcast? Or are they consistent? And then will it be a mutual exchange of value, right? Or are you just a slot filler? There's so much going on to checking it out. And I remember someone reached out to me to be a guest in their show. And I was like, oh, this is fascinating. But I hopped on YouTube, did a little search. He had a whole another side to his life, and it had pornography involved with it. And I was like, OMG. And so you have to screen the podcasts and really check them out on Google, on YouTube, and just make sure you're in alignment, because your brand is so important and you've got to protect it.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder because and here's another factor of it is like if you're, let's say you want to be talking specifically about your area of expertise, and somebody has like a storytelling podcast where you're telling like a story from your childhood or something like that. Like you want to make sure that you are aligned on topic too. I've been on podcasts, which I knew what the topic was, but I'm like, that probably was not the highest and best use of my time right now, because I'm like, I talked about walking in the woods and my childhood, and that's all fun and lovely for like my best friend, but not what I want to be using my podcasting time for.
Yeah.
And you don't get to edit it out, right? Because sometimes
Right.
as hosts, we sit there and go, what was that rambling on
Right.
there? Get out. But as a guest, it's gone. There you are.
Yeah, I think I learned the hard way that I don't just guest on any podcast anymore either. There were some that came up and they wanted me to guest on them, but I also learned that they published like daily or they published twice a day. And so their method of podcasting was meant to just quantity versus quality for whatever reason. People do this also just for monetization versus some other purposes. But I started going on those thinking, oh, this is great. They want me on there. And I'll get in front of a bunch of people because they have 2,000 million followers and they have a bunch of videos. But really, you don't get to stand out as much because that host has certain questions or just the energy of it doesn't quite align, at least not with me. It doesn't align with me anymore. So I don't go on those because, yeah, it's actually great for a backlink, for an SEO backlink, but it's not that good that it's going to make or break. So I don't really go on those types anymore. So I found which ones I like to do and which ones I don't like to do.
Yeah. And I would say that as a guest is like one of your biggest strategies to becoming a favorite guest is finding podcast hosts that you are just like, oh my gosh, I want to be a guest on your show so bad because I just like you, like we just have a good synergy and shared values and are going to have a great time. That energy together is what like makes an interview fantastic. I think we can all probably have had that experience.
Yeah. So are there some tips that you guys, I'll start with you, Emily, but the question of what kinds of things specifically should a guest look for? Like if I'm trying to get on somebody's podcast or just start the journey, like what do I look for in a guest specifically? I know we talked a little bit about aligning audiences, but what other things can we look at?
All right. So usually I will, when I'm pitching to be a guest on somebody's podcast, I'm going to show them first and foremost, like the value that I'm going to bring their listeners. Like I don't want to make it the me show when I'm sending a pitch. I want to show them I took time and I actually listened to 2 of your episodes at least, because I personally, as a guest, like to know the format. Let's say, for example, I think I've found a show that had like a 7 a.m. live and I pitched to be on their show. And then he's like, great, we do all our shows at 7 a.m. live. And I was like, oh, no. So we do have to, like, that is my number one first tip is listen to an episode and like maybe even 2 if you can. You want to kind of learn the format. You want to know if that host has like any of those special pop-up questions that they ask every single guest. And here's why. You can use that in your pitch. And you can also use things you pulled from a specific episode in your pitch. So like if I know that at the end of every episode, a host asks like, who's your most inspiring quote, or what's your most inspiring quote, right? Then I might bring that into my pitch and be like, I love at the end of every episode, you ask this and here's mine, or, I might bring it in. So being specific in your pitch can be elevated when you like take time to listen to some of those episodes. So I think that's my first tip. And then really putting that value forward. So like, here's what your listeners will walk away with, or here's what I'm going to bring to your listeners, right? Not like I just wrote this book and I'm publishing it and I want everyone to know I'm doing a book spree because that they're like, great, that's you. And that's not my goal. But thank you so much for pitching.
Yeah. Andy, do you have any tips?
Well, first of all, I want any newbie guester for podcasts to know that they deserve to be a guest. They deserve to be in the seat, to claim that seat, to own that. Your voice matters so much. And yes, sure, it's been done before or said before, but not by you and not for those folks listening. You're bringing your unique quality. So please remember that. Okay. Claim your seat on the
Yes.
podcast. And then secondly, let's say you want to get on a popular podcast. What's a good way? Just a blank, showing up out of the blue to be on a popular podcast really doesn't work unless you've become a famous influencer yourself. So I suggest going to the platforms that podcast host hangs out on and start following them like glue. Okay. Just, retweet. Well, listen to me, retweet like the old days. Repost on LinkedIn, repost on Instagram, comment on the comments, right? Really start amplifying their work in the world. And all of a sudden they're going to be like, who is this Andy Lyons? She's really amplifying. She's doing all these things. You get on their radar or their people's radar, and then you start nurturing it. And then you begin the process of pitching to, if they have people, to their people, and they'll already know you. And again, it could take time to get on that popular podcast, but don't give up. Your voice matters. You deserve to bring your expertise to the table wherever you glow.
Mm-hmm. So the don't give up is the big one, because it is somewhat, even though it's a quality thing, it's also a numbers game. And Emily, you did a podcast all around the numbers and things from both of your perspectives, and you have to keep going. What feels like a realistic, like there's a lot of energy that has to be put into this to go find these podcasts and pitch ourselves to them. What sort of how many do we have to do to get this many interviews potentially? Like, what's it like for each of you? And maybe I'll start with Andy first on this one.
Well, it's important to know your strategy, first of all. Like, what is the outcome? Why are you wanting to be a guest on a podcast? So once you have a real clear understanding of what that vision is, then you start walking it backwards. Well, what kind of topics, what kind of stories, where do I want to be in order to create the to leverage this experience so that all of a sudden I'm more visible and more people get to see me and learn what I'm doing. And you have that ability to be the connector, right? You have that ability to tell those stories. So as far as that goes, I just really think because sometimes folks just start saying, yes, I'll be on the show, and which is wonderful. You get your sea legs. The more you do, the better you get. You make your mistakes, you start refining. But at the same time, you really have to have that desired outcome right there and understand, do I have a bandwidth to do how many interviews a month, right? And, so I don't see it so much as a numbers game, Barb. I see it more as what is the desired outcome? How are you meeting your strategy? Because this is a tactic that falls under the umbrella called marketing for your business or for whatever it is that you're bringing to the world.
Mm-hmm. Good. I like it. Emily?
Okay, so last year I set out, I just wanted to try and really focus on podcast guesting because I had switched to a solo style show. And I'm like, well, I still love, for me, it's yes, marketing, but it's also like the connecting with other people and collaborating. I just do really well with that, with this format as making new friends. And so that was kind of part of my goal, right? Is just to connect with other people. So I set kind of what some people think is a crazy goal. I set out to do 50 podcasts in a year. And I ended up doing 53. Now, some of those, yay for the clapping. Some of those were not good, well aligned. I could probably pick 10 that I'm like, those maybe were not my best choices, right? Those were me just saying yes to say yes. So I could get down that list. So in order to get those, I think I pitched 100 podcasts. Now, some of those were introductions. Barb introduced me to at least 2 other podcasters. So some of that was word of mouth and introduction, but there were at least 100 exchanges to get to that 53 number. This year is so much different because I set a way smaller goal and I am being very careful and judicious with my pitches. And I also get a few more invites because I've done, I had last year kind of the wind in my sails, right? So this year my goal is 35 and I probably put in a total of about an hour a week. I'll probably do 2 hours every 2 weeks, but I put in about an hour a week of like just the kind of like looking for the right podcast to pitch, writing the pitch, creating like whatever connection I need to. And then I really do stand by, like, it takes, if it's an hour-long podcast, the whole process will probably be about 2 hours, because like the reach out, the back and forth, the sharing, like you have to kind of, it is a time investment. So I like people to just know that up front.
And Emily, for clarification, did you use a matching service for finding these podcasts?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. No, just now's the chance. No, I love Podmatch. It was really, really helpful and beneficial for me getting going as a guest. Like I do know a lot of podcasters, like that's kind of my friend group, a lot of them. But Podmatch really helped me to get in connect with some new faces. Like that's how I think I met Dave on the How to Podcast series. And I met Barb through Podmatch. So that was a really great platform for that. I will say with Podmatch, there is a learning curve. So you kind of have to like learn a little bit about the platform, but the benefit is you don't have to go track down like how a host likes to be pitched. So if a host is on there looking for guests, you can pitch them right through that platform. Whereas like if you're just kind of doing this on your own without Podmatch, you do want to like hunt down how that host likes to be pitched, because that's like that in and of itself. Like if they don't want pitches on social media and you're sending them things on social media, that's kind of a no-go. So that was a lot about Podmatch, but.
Well, and finding places that support being a guest on the show. There's a couple of emails you can subscribe to. I like going on Quoted, QWOTED. And then because they are all about the pitch, a lot of times you're pitching to journalists there, of course, as well. But when you were going on about, I pitched 100 podcasts, I could just see some newbie podcaster going, oh my gosh, how the heck did she do that? Podmatch is like a dating site, folks. You can swipe left or right, depending if it's a good fit. And it's all about guesting, right? And so it takes all of that out of the way. It makes it so much easier versus going on social and finding podcasters. And we all are on LinkedIn, so we know that people have done their search on LinkedIn and randomly show up in our feeds or our notifications saying, hey, I'd like to be a guest in your show. And that's a little bit different. So I'm so happy you had so much success with Podmatch.
And I do want to say, like, I did tailor, and I do think this is really important, like for all of us, is don't copy and paste, especially not from AI, but don't just copy and paste the same pitch over and over and over again. Like, I really want to emphasize that we want to speak right to the host. We want to show, I know who your listeners are. Like, it's not just like, I speak to women entrepreneurs. Well, great. My listeners are not women entrepreneurs, right? So I want to show them that I've actually taken a minute and listened to their show. So do tailor, even if you use a service like Podmatch. It's not just like a copy and paste, and I will just use the term again, like it's not just spray and pray, it's really intentional.
Unless you're lazy like I am. And then you have your boilerplate of the topics, right? But then you have the opening and closing that tailor.
The topics are totally, those are going to stay tried and true.
Anyway.
I think that's where, though, you can get into doing more of them and doing them on a consistent basis is when you have your pitch prepped and ready to go. And all you have to do is listen to a couple episodes here and there as you have time. So that makes it much easier to do this and in a quote faster way, I guess. And that's where, like, I think we were talking a little bit too. Do you do this to yourself? Do you hire a service? I think that's going to be a personal preference based off of your energy and how much time you have and your budget and all the things. But I know, like you, Emily, you have a podcast guesting bundle, which I used from you, and I really appreciated for that, because even though I thought I could write it myself, for example, I got too in the weeds and I was all over the place with what I was doing. So I gave you what I did and you helped me craft like the actual pitch. So all I had to do was go and listen to some things and then make those adjustments accordingly so that I could say, hey, here's what I did like, or here's my takeaway from the episode. Because I would go listen to actual episodes that did, in fact, interest me so that I could connect with it genuinely. So
See, I love that. And that's why I brought it up, unless you're lazy like me. Emily, your way with words, just so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, I am a writer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so,
Thank
and it
you.
just flows out. But I know that there are folks listening going, each one, I got to come up with a whole new, so I love that you have this guest bundle because it helps answer the questions that a host might ask. So
And
bravo for
I
having
want to
that.
say I don't want to like discourage anyone from like I think AI can be a really good starting point, and it also can really help you structure it well. Like that is part of it. How do I actually structure this pitch? That's a big question. So you definitely, I don't want to have you shy away from using that, but I just don't want you to be copying and pasting from AI because it's not going to stand out. It's just going to blend in with all the other pitches that hosts are getting. And I think that's what takes so much of your energy and time and the host's energy and time. And then it's kind of lost because you're not even getting on the show in the first place.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can we answer agency of one's question? Because
Yes.
I think this is really good. So they asked, do hosts and guests do any planning or rehearsing ahead of time, or are most on-air conversations free-flowing and organic? This is such a fantastic question. And I would love to hear what you both have to say because I, of course, have my thoughts.
Oh my gosh, the mythology of free flowing and organic. Honestly, there's really no such thing unless, you're brilliant, like Emily there, who could talk about anything to anyone. It
That is not true.
it is such a good question, agency of one. I always send my guests questions as a framework for our conversation. There are folks who can, talk about everything I'd be asking anyway in their sleep because they're such an expert in their industry. But most, and I've got 1,000 interviews under my tiara. Most of my guests have loved the questions because it helps them prepare and helps them see that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to the story arc of your podcast that day. And that just calms them down. And so that's such a great experience. So yes, preparing and planning ahead of time is key. Take it away, Barb and Emily.
So Andy does that, and I love that Andy does that, and I used to do that because I'm a preparer, and I know that Barb does that as a host. Not all hosts do this, and so as a guest, here's what I would recommend because I like to be a little tiny bit over prepared so that I know that whatever comes my way, I'm just like, I got this, it just helps me to kind of feel like a little safe and secure. So I will actually, I know the topic that we're going to be talking about going in, and I will just jot down some notes for myself. I mean, I even have them right here. I have some notes that I'm like, I want to make sure we touch on these things today. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It also allows you as a guest, like if the host is starting to ask you questions that you're just like, you're going way off topic, it helps you kind of have a place like, all right, so I do have 5 do's and don'ts, would you like me to share those? Like that kind of thing. It just allows you to sort of prompt them back into like focusing on the topic at hand. So I'm a little bit of a preparer. But as far as like actually rehearsing, I would say that's probably pretty rare. Like you're not going to usually get a chance to practice until you sit down and do it and then listen back to yourself and listen back to yourself again and listen back to yourself again until you're like, okay, I got this.
So as a host, I don't send any questions to the guest as of today, but I do have questions prepared, and it's kind of around the idea of, depending on how they flow, if I have to remember to ask questions. Sometimes guests are easier to talk to in a conversational fashion, and then I end up not even using the questions at all because it's just like, oh, I want to know this, or tell me more about that. And then as a guest, I used to write down, because I know the topics, I don't really need to prepare too much. I did in the beginning, but I don't know why, because I already knew the crap. So it was like, why was I taking all this extra time to overthink what was going to be said? And so now I just kind of wing it. And I think it does vary from guest to guest, host to host, and how they do things. But I like I tried to script some of them almost. Like I was trying to make it go in a certain way because I wanted to get certain answers from the guest. And then I just quit doing that. Like that was just
Mhm.
making it way too hard, too much time on my part, too much trying to anticipate what they might do. And then it kind of leaves little room for any like randomness, which I really love.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think in my experience too, with guesting as a guest, I always, sometimes when they hit me with those random questions, like, oh, what's your favorite song? I'm like, oh my God, I've got decades of favorite songs. Where do I begin? Or, things like that. It's also really important if you can come up with your quote that you like to share that's really relevant for who you are in the world and your wonderful work in the world. Always have that and make sure, your host has that ahead of time because, mine is, pastures are for horses, not humans. Things like that they can use a little something that they can use as a soundbite.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Okay, should we jump into some of the whys of this, or the other way we could go is the whys of doing this for marketing, what really comes out of it, and then there's also I'd like to go into the tip of piggybacking off of Andy's comment just now, like how to wrap up your guest interview. I think that's one thing I never learned how to do the end. Like when they say thanks for coming on the show, and then they usually give you a chance to share your service or whatever you're promoting. But I also learned that I was telling everybody to go to my website, and that's really not appropriate in my opinion, because I was like not giving them the like a tangible takeaway. And I was assuming that they would just go to my website. I didn't say why to go to my website. And then somebody taught me to say, well, why don't you just tell them about your podcast? Because they're already on a podcast. So if you already have a podcast, send them over to one. But if you don't, send them to your website, but tell them what they're going to get there and what they can find there. So I kind of just gave the tip, but anyways, we have those two areas to go into. And Emily, what do you feel like doing?
I think we should start here because it will kind of put a nice bow on it.
Okay.
So I'm with you on, I also used to say like, go to my website. Like
Yeah.
all the places to connect with me are there. It's like, okay, great. I now say, it may have been Barb and I talking about this, but I now say like, since you're already listening to a podcast, it's a quick and easy jump over to mine. You can download it on the same app that you're listening to this one on. And if you like it, I would love for you to keep on hanging out with me over there. So it's that way you're not detracting one single bit from like the fact that they're loving the host podcast, right? You're keeping them on that same platform and they're there for the host. And they're also just kind of like giving you another chance. And I like Dave's tip of sending them to a specific podcast episode that ties into the conversation. I will say one call to action is all you need. Like what people are like, and then my freebie, and then my website, and then my podcast. just one call to action.
Yes, agreed. I 100% like that's a marketing 101, right? Just give them one thing to do. They can't do 5. They're already doing 20 over here. So
Yeah.
one is good. Yes. Andy?
Yeah, I'm all about gathering their thoughts at the end. So throughout the interview, I'm promoting them. We're talking to Emily Aborn today. And, you can learn more about Emily's work and follow her podcast here. So Emily, that kind of thing. So at the end, I like to hear, and I suggest anybody doing something that is emotionally, bonding to listeners, tap into, in my case, with the New England Podcasters Group, are you feeling isolated as a podcaster? Well, come join us. Come play, play in the pod garden. We have a wonderful online community where passionate podcasters connect and share and thrive and glow. We have fun, something like that, where they're going to get the emotional why.
I do love that. Yeah. I think I want to start trying that.
Keep the hugs going.
Yeah. That's
whatever
great.
that looks like. But I also huge fan of, as a podcaster, having them tune into an episode or a blog that you've recently written that will solve their problem and answer their questions.
And Barb, you touched on this. I can't stress it enough. Please say thank you. Like, I know sometimes guests get a little awkward. You say thank you so much and they're like, yep, bye. It's like, no, say thank you. Say
See you
thank you.
later.
Say thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation. Just end it on that note. They're going to take it into the outro music anyway, right there. But I
Yeah.
At the beginning and the end,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I had one guest didn't thank me, and I just sat there waiting for the thank you. I was like, what the shit? Like, what am I going to do with that now? And then I ended up, cutting it out and stuff and did the outro. But at the time of the recording, it was so awkward. And I would just say to you guys talked about emotions, and I'm just trying to find my emotions. And that just gave me like a little mini anxiety attack when you said try to find an emotion way to connect. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. We'll see. But okay. All right. Let's get into like the whys, because I do think the whys are important. Not to just say we're doing this to do this. It is to grow our business. It is to get out there, and it's another marketing method. And I think for me, I did not realize how much okay, so it's kind of like blinders. We all have our favorite things to do when we're doing marketing of our business. Sometimes it's also about how much we can actually allow ourselves to do. Because I've never even considered doing this when I first started my business. And now I cannot consider not doing it just because of the ease of it. And because like the shows that you find, they already have the audience and they are already invested and interested in it. And so it feels like it's a much faster way to get farther. And it's not like it's an overnight thing still, but it's a little bit simpler to do because it's already tapping into what I already know. I don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. And I just really appreciate the ease of this particular tactic. I don't have to do something I have to do something every day in theory, but like I don't have to try and figure out what to say for something different for the social algorithms, or I don't have to pay Google ads. So I've really appreciated it from that perspective, but there's other benefits to it too. And I know, Emily, you have some thoughts on that.
Well, one I mentioned earlier is using it to like find other connect with other people and collaborate with other people. So like Barb and I are not like, she had me on her podcast. I think that's how it started. And then Barb introduced me to another podcaster and I was a guest on his podcast. But then Barb is like, hey, I have an idea. Let's do this live event. And we did that. And now we're doing this live event and we're doing perhaps an in-person event someday. So it's like, it's not for me just about that one time. And Dave asked this question above, actually, like, how do you keep that relationship going? I mean, Barb and I connected on social media, I guess, after the podcast, and we like talk on social media, and then we're like, well, we're now Voxer friends, right? So I would say that part of my answer to that, Dave, is like not putting the limitation on like, oh, I can't reach out to them via email. I can't, send them a Facebook message. Like you can keep that conversation going just in whatever way is like natural and organic and works for you. And obviously if the synergy is not there, the synergy is not there. But I say all that to say, I don't discount the connections that I make. Like I'm not just like, great, I'm doing this for marketing, right? I'm in it for just my own personal growth and my own personal relationships and connecting throughout my business in various ways. So that's been a huge benefit for me. But my second benefit, and I think this is why I'm so passionate about like helping people become guests, you really find your voice and you refine your message and you're like, oh, this is what I stand for. Like, this is what I believe. And you get to hear it reflected back to you in various ways. And you learn your strengths and like the things you want to keep working on. It is like the ultimate message refinement and personal growth refinement tool that you can find if you allow it to be. So those are like my non-tangibles.
I love those, Emily. Those are outstanding. Here's the truth about podcasting and being a guest. It increases your expert status. It is social proof for your expert status. So when I entered the pro-aging world, I left the startup world behind, where I'd been for 8 years, and I entered pro-aging. Nobody knew me. I didn't know anything about, quote, the industry, but I knew the fastest way for me to become considered a thought leader in this category was to start interviewing people and being interviewed on pro-aging podcasts. And so I had a specific strategy to increase awareness about this topic. And within 9 months, someone set up their thought leader pack on Blue Sky, and boom, I was right there in the top 5 people. And I thought that's because I did podcasting and I was a podcast guest. And it's that wonderful combination. A lot of us segue into new industries all the time, right? And how do you become and get a footprint in that new industry? Podcasting and being a podcast guest. So to me, that's one of the top tips. And I'd also like to throw it out there today to answer your question too about keeping the conversation going. So on LinkedIn, you've got that little bell on a guest's profile there. Tap that so that you get notifications whenever they post. And that's a wonderful way to stay in touch with a fave guest without being considered a stalker.
There's like so much. So what Andy just said, Christy from Mickey Guru Travel Company had kind of touched on earlier. She said she wants to guest on podcasts that speak to her ideal client so she can show people how she helps.
Right.
And that's exactly what Andy's talking about, is like building that expertise and helping people to understand what you do. And I think
and social proof.
Yes,
That's
social
so
proof.
important.
Exactly. And like, I also love being able to use those guest episodes as like education for either clients I'm already working with. I'm like, oh, I have an episode on that I did with so-and-so, or just like a person that asks me a question. I'm like, well, I could write you a 6-page email, or I could just send you this. I could just send you this podcast episode. You can go find it on your own time. So I also love the educational perspective that we can, we have that to kind of like repurpose with.
Yeah. Another way to stay in touch, if you're not even sure how to do it, is to literally share the show, because there are so many people that go on the show as a guest. I'm not saying that I can do a better job. I'm not going to shame myself, but like the idea of that host getting stuff out there is they also want to encourage you to share it. And so if you're not sure how to connect with them, or maybe there isn't a way to connect with them right away, but you want to show your gratitude for it, is to share the show. So don't just do it for yourself to get the backlink, to get the accolades, to get the whatever you're doing it for, to get the visibility. But if you share it, it shows that you actually cared about their time and their troubles that they went through to do it. And you don't have to share it just once. Oh my gosh, this is the great thing about content repurposing. Emily and I could talk about that one all day too, but
that's the next live.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yes. Okay, let's do it. The first, you publish it once, but you can like change it up and put it in different formats, put it on different channels depending on what, but not even just the once, like once every 3 months, once every 6 months, depending on the topic. And so you can reshare it, and that just lets them know that you really appreciated it. And it kind of helps them too, because they're looking for more ideas and they may have forgotten about it after some time. Not because they meant to, it's just that there's so many that they have to do. So that can also help.
Sharing your episode, I cannot stress enough. Like that is, so a lot of these indie podcasters, they might have, let's say I've had some big names on my show. And guess what they don't do? They don't share my podcast episode. They're not like blasting it out to their 1 million followers, right? But the people that really are like excited to be on the show because they don't, this is like a podcast guesting opportunity for them. They take time to share the episode. And that is actually how a lot of the indie podcast shows grow. So I like really, really stand behind as guests, the importance of us sharing those episodes. You may not, depending on how many you're doing, like you may not get to share them all, but take time to share the ones that you can. And at the very least, reshare all of the ones that people tag you in.
You can even put a page on your website that has all the ones that you've been featured in, and it gives them a backlink as well. So it's just a little nod to, hey, thanks for sharing with me too. So okay, well, I know we're getting close to the hour mark. I want to touch on, there's another question that somebody asked, and then we can do a wrap up with final thoughts. John was asking, how can you find the best match in terms of not being a competitor, but complementary to your expertise? It's a great question.
Super great.
Which one of you guys want to tackle this?
Go, Emily.
Okay, well, I would just echo or go back to what I said at the beginning about taking, Barb and I actually both do SEO, but we do it in very different ways. So even if I wanted to come on her show and talk about SEO, for example, I would take a different path than what she is taking. So I would show specifically my difference in it, like maybe I don't have a good example for that. So I probably should not have used that as an example. But finding a difference between the way that you do things or a different approach, or maybe you work with a different audience, that can be really, really helpful. Or you just have different services. I think just like going back to your topics and figuring out the differences between what you and everybody else are talking about. I've been on copywriters shows before, and we've just talked about we've just taken a topic that I'm really knowledgeable about and they want a feature and they didn't want to talk about it themselves. So I have done it many, many times, and it's really just about finding kind of like the missing gem, I guess, in what their content doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, yes, I do this other one too. I know, Emily, you do this, and I do this as well, as Spotify playlist with all your guest appearances, which is super helpful. And I do a YouTube one too for those who do YouTube.
Yep.
Also. And then we have Amy saying bigger names are often bad about sharing, but often she invites them to collaborate on Instagram. That helps because all they have to do is click a button.
Yes.
Which helps. All right. Oh, and then Mickey also said, even Taylor Swift thanks Jason and Travis. So I don't care about having Taylor Swift in my marketing, but I think it's funny that even you said that. Like, there's always a Swiftie side. It's just hysterical.
Well, and Christy, I'm thinking you're going to get to that wedding. Follow Christy on TikTok. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Oh, it's a cliffhanger.
All right. So, all right. Well, let's wrap up with final thoughts and what people can expect with, I can talk about the after this and what people can expect to see. So, Candy, do you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up with?
I do. I want to give everybody a pro tip.
Okay.
And that is, after you've guested on someone's podcast, and if it was a good experience, please give them a LinkedIn recommendation.
Yes.
And if you are a host, please give your guest a LinkedIn recommendation. It's really a random act of kindness, and it amplifies. People are always screening you. They're screening podcast host, podcast guest. They're screening you, LinkedIn. Unless you've done a really good job with your SEO, LinkedIn is probably going to be the first thing that shows up in someone's search about you. And having that recommendation there is so helpful, and it really adds wind to someone's sales. And it's just a nice woohoo moment. So I just think that, and it leaves a lasting impression. And that's, what you want to do as a guest and as a host.
Mm-hmm.
I love that tip. And I would add on, go ahead and take the same recommendation and put it as a podcast review too. Mm-hmm. Really, really, I think my take home tip is just come with a giver's mindset. So like, this is a gift. I mean, it is a gift for both of you, right? You're bringing your expertise to the table, and you're bringing great value to their listeners and their audience. And they're giving you this gift of visibility and a conversation that you have no idea what the possibility on the other side is. So just think of it as a give, right? Not a give take, and come into it with like a giver's mindset and a giver's heart.
Mm-hmm. I love those. I am going to wrap up with an offer, and offering people to be able to come on my podcast with the idea that you have explored your topics, that you have done the work and thinking about, and go ahead and pitch me if you would like. And I can give you feedback on that particular, but also to allow you to come on in a very easy, I would hope, fashion, because I know that you're just trying to start out. But that doesn't mean that if there's no topic, like, it does have to have some substance to it, right? Like, so try and figure out what topic would help for other small business owners. And you can go to, we'll have all the links for you. I'll say that we're going to have an email that will come out to you afterwards with a bunch of links, and I'll tell you a couple, and then I'll have Emily tell you a couple of hers as well. So we'll have a link so that you can have this replay to revisit. And then there'll be the link for the podcast guesting for my show if you would like to pitch yourself. And there's also some great stuff by Emily. And I'll let you speak to that, Emily.
So I have a podcast guesting bundle that I'm going to be including in these links. And basically I help you come up with those topics and like how we're going to present them and help you find some of those places to pitch, which I know Barb has some resources.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be in there too.
Okay. And then last thing, I want Andy to plug this, but if you are in New England, I cannot recommend to you more to come to one of the New England Podcasters Group events in Westford, Mass on the second Saturday of the month from 12 to 2. And I'll let Andy talk about that because that group is fantastic.
Oh my gosh. First of all, yes, we're rooted in New England. We love in person. There's nothing better than looking someone in the eye, giving them a hug, sharing all those side conversations you just can't have online. But that said, we're rooted in New England, but we're open to all. We have a wonderful community pod garden. And especially for folks who are curious about becoming a podcaster, we have helped so many folks take that leap, get those, first 10 episodes done. And we are inclusive, we're welcoming, and we don't just grow podcasts, we grow people. And it's so much more fun to grow and glow together. So visit newenglandpodcasters.group. You can also follow us on Instagram, watch the reels. You can see we're just shiny, happy podcasters and newbie podcasters and wannabe curious podcasters. And it's a wonderful group. And really, it's the best way to get through tough times is to be with people and community.
All right. Thank you for that. And thank you, Emily. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for everybody coming to take the time out of your day to do this. I know it does take some time and some energy. And for some of us, it's a little earlier than others. So thank you so much, everybody. And okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Barb,
you beat me to it.
Barb, thank you for having me on this wonderful live stream. You're a phenomenal live stream host.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Barb and Andy and everyone who joined us. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks.